Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Ray. I'm a detransitioned male, and today I'm going to be talking about how trans activists are lying to people about hormone therapy being a magical cure-all for your mental health problems, and that they're going to somehow magically solve all your life problems and cure you of all your mental health issues. And this is a lie. It's based on zero or weak evidence from systematic literature reviews. But this is part of the indoctrination pipeline. This is how people get indoctrinated into the transgender pipeline, the medicalization pipeline, because they're being sold this lie that, oh, I am suffering all these mental health issues. If I take hormones, everything in my life will be better. And that, this gender stuff is the core thing in my life that I need to solve. And if I solve this gender thing by taking the hormones, everything in my life will be better. And this is a lie. There's no evidence for this. And trans activists are pushing the narrative anyway, saying these ridiculous things. And okay, so I'm going to react to this trans activist who is pushing for this narrative.
Trans people just have the best antidepressant ever made. If you don't know, hormones will fix a lot of your mental problems because a lot of us have a chemical imbalance in our brain that makes us need the other hormone. That's why a lot of people theorize that being trans is an intersex condition of the brain. Hormones affect a lot of our body, and emotions are one of those. It's a known fact that women who go through menopause oftentimes feel a different emotional state because they no longer have estrogen in their body and they're just used to it, or at least need it. From my own experience, I can tell you that estrogen has helped my mental health so much, to the point that I'm not really depressed a lot of the time unless—
Notice they say a lot of the time. They say like, oh, hormones fix, cures all your mental health issues, but they're so depressed like some of the time. So it didn't clearly cure their depression.
there is an outside source making me depressed. Like, when I forget to take my hormones, I notice within the day because my mood starts to drop as that half-life starts to drop. Like, I physically notice the emotional change from having testosterone in my body, from having estrogen in my body. And if estrogen specifically, it allows you to feel your emotions more, meaning that when you are happy, you really feel that joy inside you. Granted, when you're sad, you also really feel that sadness.
Okay, so a couple things I want to comment on. Like this idea that trans is a neurological intersex condition that leads to a chemical imbalance such that a male medically needs estrogen in their brain in order to be healthy. This is a total lie, a total fabrication. And it's just not true. The male body, the optimal health of the physical health, physiological health, the physiological functioning of the body um, is optimal on testosterone, because that is what the male body is designed by the evolutionary process to run on in the most optimal way. So it's just not the case. I mean, taking estrogen as a male increases your risk for deep vein thrombosis. So how could something be medically necessary that causes you to have a greater risk of cardiovascular health problems? That just doesn't make any sense. Well, the reason why it feels good to take estrogen is not because you have an intersex chemical imbalance. It's because you desire for those hormones. You desire to be feminine. And by taking the hormones, your desires for feminization are satisfied. And the satisfaction of desires leads to a temporary state of euphoria. But why do males desire to be feminine in the first place? Well, the overwhelming majority of cases of males desiring to be feminine is due to what's called autogynephilia, which is an inverted form of heterosexuality. You're attracted to femininity, but you also want to be feminine. Your heterosexual attraction to femininity becomes inverted somehow. It's speculated that it's connected to autism and the mechanisms of self that are involved in autism, because it's highly correlated with autism. Nevertheless, this inverted sexual orientation, this inverted sexuality causes people to develop things like feminization kinks, or stuff like this. And this desire for feminization when these males take the estrogen, it feels better, partly because it's a reduction of the anguish of the testosterone-driven libido, which causes, sexual compulsions and intrusive thoughts, and sort of, and it causes, and this inverted sexual orientation leads to the development of gender dysphoria, because you're desiring to be feminine as part of your sexuality. And so when you satisfy those desires, that makes you that makes you feel good. But it's like a euphoria. But that's not the same thing as curing your anxiety, your depression, all this stuff. And if you do have reductions in your symptoms of anxiety and depression, it could be the case that that reduction is not because you have a chemical imbalance in your brain. It's because it feels good and less stressful overall to live your truth, live the truth of your sexuality, to express your sexuality in a way that makes you feel good. That can lead to a greater sense of life satisfaction. But we can't be telling these lies about chemical imbalances and neurological intersects. We have to speak the truth in regards to what is driving this desire for feminization in males. And this idea that it will improve your mental health is just not borne out by the evidence. So let me look at something here. So this is the CAS review. So the CAS review was a series of systematic evidence reviews looking at all the available literature in pediatric gender medicine, commissioned by the National Health Service in the UK, run by a well-respected a pediatrician named Dr. Hilary Cass. And they looked at all the evidence related to giving hormones to minors, people under 18. And so I'm going to read this paragraph. Overall, the systematic review authors concluded that there is a lack of high quality research assessing the outcomes of hormone interventions in adolescents with gender dysphoria / incongruence. And few studies that undertake long-term follow-up. No conclusions can be drawn about the effect on gender dysphoria, body satisfaction, psychosocial health, cognitive development, or fertility. Uncertainty remains about the outcomes for height growth, cardiometabolic, and bone health. There is suggestive evidence from mainly pre-post studies that hormone treatment may improve psychological health, although robust research with long-term follow-up is needed. So this is critical. It may improve psychological health, but there's not strong evidence for that. And one of the main reasons is because there's a huge lack of long-term follow-up. If you go on the hormones as a male, for the first year or so, you're going to be in this pink bubble euphoria or whatever. But 8 years into it, when all the, magic, happiness, and euphoria, goes away, you just try to live your life as this, trans-identified person trying to pass in the world. We don't have evidence on that long term, and anecdotal evidence suggests that, around 8 years or so, that is when things like detransition and pop up. And it's just long term, we don't have solid evidence. We can't say one way or another what is the long term outcome. And if there is evidence for improved psychological health, it's certainly not due to a chemical imbalance in your brain that medically necessitates you to take estrogen as a male. That is just not the case. Now, it might be that taking the estrogen improves your happiness because you're happy with your appearance, because your autogynephilic sexual orientation desires to be feminine. And when your desires are satisfied, you're typically happier. Okay, so this is just the CAS review. Well, there's been other systematic evidence reviews that basically have concluded the same thing. So this one is from 2021. They said that 3 studies focus on, hormone therapy was associated with increased quality of life, decreased depression, and decreased anxiety. However, certainty in this conclusion is limited by high risk of bias in study designs, small sample sizes, and confounding with other interventions. we could not draw any conclusions about death by suicide. Future studies should investigate the psychological benefits of hormone therapy among the larger and more diverse groups of transgender people. Okay, so another systematic review. Hormone therapy interventions to improve the mental health and quality of life in transgender people with gender dysphoria have not been evaluated in controlled trials. Low quality evidence suggests that hormone therapy may lead to improvements in psychological functioning. The key word there is low quality evidence and may lead, not this idea that the trans activists are pushing, which is that going on the hormones and this medical pathway is a guaranteed way to fix all the problems in your life and solve all your mental health issues. Another systematic review basically said the same thing. The review indicates that gender dysphoria related mental distress may benefit from hormonal treatment intervention, suggesting a transient reaction to the non satisfaction connected to the incongruent body image rather than a stable psychiatric comorbidity. But yeah, so long story short is like we just don't have enough evidence to confidently conclude that taking hormones is going to fix all your mental health problems. So this is a lie being sold by the trans activists, and it's pushing people down this pathway. And so I don't want to say that if you are an adult, you shouldn't take hormones, particularly because if you are of the autogynephilic type, if you have this inverted sexual orientation such that you strongly want to be feminine as part of the expression of your sexuality, the expression of your inverted heterosexuality, the expression of, whatever. And that sexual orientation can lead to dysphoria about your body. It can lead you to not like your male body. It can lead you to not like the prospect of masculinizing, going bald, or, whatever. So that hormone process can satisfy your sexual desires, but that's not the same thing as having a chemical imbalance in your brain such that you medically need it. You don't medically need it, you psychologically need it as part of the manifestation of your sexuality. So that is the key thing. And we have to fight this lie that's being pushed by referring to the systematic evidence, and speak the truth about this, because people are being misled, and there are very serious medical consequences and risk to becoming a lifelong medical patient. If you go on the hormone pathway as a male, you have to block your testosterone by taking a anti-androgen. Long term, that is not good to be on those anti-androgens long term. So this leads to people push you to get an orchiectomy to remove your testicles so that you don't have to be on the anti-androgens anymore. And this is, and I think the biggest problem here is not necessarily the intrinsic health risks, such as the increased risk of deep vein thrombosis. The biggest issue in my problem is becoming a lifelong medical patient that is now dependent on the medical pharmaceutical industry in order to maintain your healthy functioning, as in terms of making it such that your body is now dependent on exogenous hormonal intervention for the rest of your life, necessitating you to be a lifelong medical patient, lifelong, you have to take this hormones all the time. And the oral form, the easiest and most convenient form of the estrogen, the oral form, the pill, it is bad for you. It gets processed by your liver and it is toxic. It is not good to take the oral form of the estrogen. So now the healthier version is to inject estrogen into your body. So now you have to, and a lot of people don't like doing this because of the needles. People don't like having to inject themselves every 2 weeks, every week, whatever. You have to do that for the rest of your life. Or you can take the patch form or the cream or whatever, but there's problems with this as well. I think the fundamental problem is becoming dependent on the medical pharmaceutical industry such that, you're consciously choosing to become a lifelong medical patient. And that is just not ideal, I don't think. Now, if your dysphoria from your autogynephilia or whatever is so bad that you just really feel like you need this, I support the autonomous right for adults to make these decisions, but we need to conceptualize them as cosmetic interventions, elective cosmetic interventions to satisfy a desire for feminization. This is not medically necessary stuff. If you don't take the estrogen, it's not like your body's going to fall apart and you're going to develop cancer or your liver's going to start working or your kidneys are going to fail. You're going to be perfectly physiologically healthy for the rest of your life. So if this is not medically necessary stuff, this is not life-saving medical health care. This is elective cosmetic body modification in order to satisfy your sexual desires for feminization, which is borne out by your sexuality, which is an inverted form of heterosexuality called autogynephilia. That is what's happening in the majority of the cases. Upwards of 80% of all trans-identified males currently today in 2024 in the Western world are of the autogynephilic type etiology. So we need to be honest about what we're dealing with here. This is elective cosmetic body modification to satisfy a desire for feminization. It is not life-saving medical care because you have a chemical imbalance in your brain, because you're intersex or whatever. That is not the case. That is a lie. Okay, that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.